Dobro jutro, dobry večer, dame i gospoda. Это Центр управления полетами Korolyov. Good morning to everyone around the world. This is Mission Control Korolyov. You're looking at a live picture of a Russian Proton rocket poised to deliver to space the next major piece of the International Space Station, the Swesda service module. Swesda, the Russian word meaning star, is 26 minutes away from being launched on a path that will take it to its permanent home 14 days from now. The actual launch time is 8:56 and 36 seconds this morning Moscow time. That's 10:56 local time at Baikonur Cosmodrome in southern Kazakhstan. The 42,000-pound Swesda was mated to its Proton rocket 5 days ago, and this past Saturday morning was transported by rail car to Launch Complex 81. Baikonur is home to many historic launch pads which dot the landscape of the sprawling complex, which measures 95 by 75 kilometers. But Swesda's journey to the International Space Station began long ago on the drawing boards of Russia's aerospace engineers, who designed it to be the first piece of that country's newest space station, a follow-on to Mir. When Russia joined the International Space Station project in 1993, Swesda became the centerpiece of the Russian segment of the complex and its early living quarters. After reaching the pad, the Proton rocket was raised vertically for the final preparations for launch. The three stages of the Proton use a combination of asymmetrical dimethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide as their propellant. The first stage has 6 liquid rocket engines that will burn for 2 minutes 6 seconds. The second stage combines the thrust of 4 liquid rocket engines that will fire for about 3 minutes 28 seconds. And the third stage has 1 liquid cruise engine that will burn for 4 minutes 3 seconds. Once the final stage has completed its job, Swesda will be in an initial orbit of 214 miles at its high point and 108 miles at its low point. That's 343 by 173 kilometers. Additional engine firings will occur during the next 2 weeks to place Swesda at an altitude closely matching that of the International Space Station. At the time of Swesda's launch, the International Space Station will be flying high above the Solomon Islands over the Pacific. Once in space, Swesda's thruster jets will perform numerous maneuvers to adjust its orbit in relation to that of the International Space Station. Leading up to docking, the two spacecraft will perform a dual rendezvous, meaning that engine firings are conducted by both spacecraft to refine their positions in relation to one another. About a month from now, an unpiloted Progress cargo ship will be launched atop a Soyuz rocket, delivering more supplies that will be used by astronauts and cosmonauts as the complex grows in size and capability. The Proton rocket, with Swesda cocooned inside a protective shroud at the top, stands about 180 feet tall. That's about 55 meters. This type of launch vehicle has been used for heavy lift launches of Russian satellites since 1965. Today, the rocket, built by the Khrunichev State Research and Production Space Center, continues the complex task of putting the International Space Station together. On the scene at Baikonur awaiting Swesda's launch is NASA's Rob Navius, who filed this report earlier.
Here at this legendary site in the Central Asian desert, all is in readiness for the launch of Swesda just a few minutes from now. Several miles away from our viewing site is the launch pad from which Yuri Gagarin was launched almost 40 years ago to become the first human to fly in space. Today, with temperatures approaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the Russian space program begins a new chapter with the launching of the service module. We are located at Launch Complex 81 here at Baikonur, about 3 kilometers or a little less than 2 statute miles from Launch Pad 23, where the Proton sits fully fueled awaiting its liftoff. Here at the viewing site, a large group of officials and dignitaries are on hand, including NASA Administrator Daniel Golden, NASA's Associate Administrator for Spaceflight Joe Rothenberg, Johnson Space Center Director George Abbey, and Kennedy Space Center Director Roy Bridges. Russian Aviation and Space Agency General Director Yuri Koptev leads the Russian delegation here at Baikonur, along with the chief designer of the service module, Yuri Semyenov of RSC Energia. Other heads of agency involved in the International Space Station program are here as well, along with ISS Program Manager Tommy Holloway and astronaut Bob Cabana, the Deputy Manager for International Relations, who commanded the first ISS assembly mission in December 1998. And here to watch as Swesda begins its journey are Tom Stafford and Vance Brand, the commander and command module pilot of the Apollo capsule for the Apollo-Soyuz test project, which began international partnership in space on July 15, 1975, almost 25 years ago to the day. That's it from Baikonur as we await launch, Kyle. Back to you in Korolyov.
Now just 21 minutes and 20 seconds away as the countdown clock continues to this morning's launch of the Swesda service module. Some of the milestones in the final hours of today's countdown have included the activation of Swesda's internal systems for final health checks, including the module's radio communications system, the thermal control system, and the motion control system to provide stability for Swesda in orbit. About 6 hours ago, the 3 stages of the Proton rocket were loaded with propellant, which has been replenished and topped off over the past 2 hours. About 40 minutes ago, updates to the Proton's onboard computers were sent in pre-programmed commands, and just 20 minutes ago, launch officials initiated a timing device governing the final major events that lead up to the Proton's launch, again at 8:56 this morning Moscow time, 10:56 a.m. Baikonur time. Swesda's initial development and construction was performed by Khrunichev, with most of its assembly and checkout conducted by Rocket Space Corporation Energia, located here in Korolyov near the Russian Mission Control Center. Swesda serves as the first fully Russian contribution to the International Space Station program and will provide the living quarters necessary to put humans on board permanently later this year.
The origin of Swesda, the third component of the International Space Station, dates to the early 1990s, when NASA, the European Space Agency, and the space agencies of Canada and Japan were planning a new space station. Russia was also laying the groundwork for a space station to succeed its Mir space station. As those designs proceeded, NASA brought the newly formed Russian Federation into the global partnership, with Swesda to be the first fully Russian contribution to the International Space Station. Swesda's layout is similar to the core module of Mir. The Khrunichev State Research and Production Space Center in Moscow began construction on the service module in 1991 for the Rocket Space Corporation Energia, which will operate it on orbit. In June of 1998, Khrunichev announced completion of the module and transported it across town to Energia, where it began sensitive system testing. In April 1999, in front of a large group of dignitaries, the service module was unveiled for the entire world to see. Shortly thereafter, it was placed on a special rail car for the 1,200-mile journey to the Asian launch site at the Baikonur Cosmodrome for final testing and launch preparations. Designed for an on-orbit life of up to 15 years, Swesda is 43 feet long, more than 97 feet across from the tip of one solar array to the other, 21 tons of hardware that will ride to Earth orbit atop a Russian Proton rocket. Swesda contains one docking port in the aft transfer chamber, where Soyuz and Progress ships can dock, and 3 docking ports around the forward transfer chamber, one to link with the aft end of the Zarya control module, and 2 more for other Russian-built components of the station due to arrive later in the station's assembly sequence. The transfer compartment will also serve as an airlock for spacewalks using the Russian Orlan spacesuit. Between these chambers is the heart of Swesda, the main work compartment. Here, long-duration crew members will have personal sleeping quarters, complete with toilet and hygiene facilities, a galley with a refrigerator freezer, and a communal table for meals, exercise equipment, and a choice of 14 windows through which they can watch the Earth and the stars pass by. In this compartment, crew members will find the workstations to control ISS's life support system, its electrical power distribution and data processing systems, the flight control and propulsion systems, and communications with mission control centers in Houston and Korolyov. Many of the control, guidance, and navigation functions are handled by the European Space Agency-supplied data management system. This month, perched atop a Russian Proton rocket, Swesda was rolled to the launch pad at Baikonur for the final countdown.
Back at the launch site at Launch Complex 81 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, the Proton stands ready for launch as officials conduct additional checks of its onboard batteries, having just completed a realignment of the rocket's trajectory control system. In a few minutes, Swesda's telemetry systems will be activated and monitoring of the Proton's thermal systems begins. 10 minutes prior to launch, about 6.5 minutes from now, the Proton steering jets will be activated as well. Here in the Russian Mission Control Center, flight controllers are ready to begin their job of monitoring Swesda following its launch and insertion into orbit. Energia will oversee the module's operation along with U.S. flight controllers making up the Houston Support Group here in Moscow and flight controllers in NASA's Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas. For Russian and American flight controllers, the next 2 weeks will be busy watching over the activation and checkout of Swesda's systems, leading to the docking with the International Space Station's orbiting Zarya and Unity modules.
All systems aboard Swesda, the first living quarters of the International Space Station, will be idle as the module rides to orbit atop a Russian Proton rocket. 10 minutes after launch, the module will separate from the third stage of the Proton, and rockets on that spent stage will pull it away from Swesda. Meanwhile, an automatic sequence of computer commands on Swesda will order deployment of antennas for its Kurs rendezvous and docking system and for the Lyra communications system. At about the same time, Swesda's solar arrays are to deploy and immediately begin following the sun. Meanwhile, automatic commands will order the activation of the module's major systems. One orbit later, as the module flies high over Russian communication stations on the ground, mission controllers will verify the proper activation of the major systems. Then they will command the drifting Swesda into an orientation designed to minimize propellant usage while allowing the solar arrays to gather sunlight. On the next ground station pass, controllers will reconfigure the module's onboard attitude sensors, activate its star tracker, and test the ability of a new communication system to relay information to Russian ground controllers. Tomorrow, when Swesda again comes into the range of Russian ground stations, flight controllers will first command it to a different attitude and later will test fire its maneuvering engines. That will set the stage for the following day's 2 firings of the module's main engines, raising Swesda's orbit to approximately the altitude of the International Space Station. Over the course of the next several days, controllers will first test the ability of the module's motion control system to orient the solar arrays while flying in darkness, and then test the efficiency of the solar arrays themselves. They will also verify telemetry to and from the motion control system computer to ensure that Swesda is ready to meet the ISS. A day prior to docking, Swesda will be maneuvered to its docking orientation and its solar arrays moved into the proper docking position to verify any impact that orientation will have on battery charging. The next day, the Kurs rendezvous system will be activated, and Swesda will become the passive partner to the International Space Station as it moves toward a docking with its newest member. With the Zarya module controlled, the station will chase and catch up to Swesda. Ground commands through Zarya's automated rendezvous system will slowly pull the station next to the module and then capture Swesda. It will take approximately 25 minutes for the hooks and latches on the 2 modules to fully close, achieving a hard mate and adding a 3rd module to the International Space Station. Over the following 16 to 24 hours, flight controllers will closely monitor pressure between the newly joined modules to ensure an airtight seal. And then they'll begin work to turn control of most station functions over from Zarya, its first component, to Swesda, the future home of the permanent crews on the International Space Station.
The countdown is proceeding on schedule for the launch of the Swesda service module just 12 minutes, 15 seconds from now. Ground controllers at Baikonur are sending commands to activate the module's telemetry system, which will relay vibration and acoustic data to the American and Russian flight control teams here in Korolyov during the Proton's ascent. Standing by at NASA's Johnson Space Center in the International Space Station Flight Control Room is a team of U.S. flight controllers watching over today's activities. James Hartsfield is there with an update from the Mission Control Center half a world away in Houston. Good morning, James, or should I say good evening.
It's a very good evening here in Houston at the Mission Control Center. Here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Mission Control Center, a team of about 20 flight controllers has been monitoring the orbiting International Space Station Zarya and Unity modules. They've been on station since about 8 p.m. Central Time this evening. The team's been watching the progress of Swesda launch activities as well. Overseeing activities tonight in the Station Flight Control Room is Station Flight Director Mark Faring. The International Space Station is currently passing over the Pacific Ocean on a southerly course through the Central Pacific at an altitude of about 235 statute miles. At the time Swesda lifts off from Baikonur, the International Space Station will be flying about 230 miles above the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean. In addition to creating a home in orbit, Swesda's launch signals the start of a cascade of station assembly flights. The teams in this room and in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room just down the hall will oversee a rapid expansion of the International Space Station in the coming months. In fact, during the next 12 months, astronauts will conduct the most complex and difficult series of space missions attempted since men landed on the moon. Those efforts will culminate in the International Space Station becoming the largest, most powerful, and most sophisticated spacecraft ever built as quickly as the end of next year. By the fall of 2001, the station will have more electrical power, crucial for effective modern research work, than any previous space station. By that time, it already will have a volume of living and working space larger than a 3-bedroom house. And as 2001 draws to a close, it will be fully open for business, ready for the first missions dedicated primarily to research. Also by then, the end of 2001, even though it will still be less than a third of its final size, the International Space Station will already at times be the third brightest object in the night sky. In just a few months, this team of flight controllers and their partners in Moscow will be working with the first residents of the station, a crew that will bring the orbiting complex to permanent life. The exciting and challenging road from here to there begins tonight.
The launch of the Swesda service module marks a milestone in the construction of the International Space Station, which requires over 40 flights and the addition of over 100 components to complete. In this sequence of events, the addition of Swesda is the first time the station is transformed from a place to visit to a place to live. Assembly began in 1998 with the joining of 2 modules in Earth orbit, the Russian-built and American-funded Zarya module and the U.S.-made Unity module. Zarya primarily provided storage for supplies and fuel and station maneuverability during the early construction phase. Space shuttle crews have already used Zarya to store food, water, and other supplies that will be used by future station crews. Unity is a connecting module with 6 portholes that lead to existing and future station elements. It also houses the early communication system, which allows ground controllers to monitor the station's health and status and issue important commands. With the 2 components joined and activated, assembly continued with the addition of more hardware on the station exterior, including a Russian space crane and an American-made crane. The stage is now set for Swesda, equipped with sleeping quarters, water, air, power, communications, and a galley. Swesda will allow crews to inhabit the station in 4-month rotations, ensuring humans a permanent presence in space. A key event in assembly, the existing space station will be maneuvered by ground controllers to dock with Swesda in Earth orbit. Soon after Swesda is in place, an unpiloted Russian cargo vessel will bring supplies for the first station crew. A shuttle logistics flight will follow to unload the Russian vessel, continue to outfit the station, and transfer additional supplies from the shuttle's Spacehab module to the station. The next mission will deliver new hardware, including an exterior framework called the Z1 Truss and a new mating adapter. With all the preparations made, the station comes to life with the arrival of the first station crew, Expedition 1. The crew will arrive via a Russian Soyuz spacecraft and is composed of Commander Bill Shepard, Soyuz Commander Yuri Gidzenko, and Flight Engineer Sergei Krikalev. The crew will activate station systems and will see the station grow in size and power. Within weeks, the space shuttle will deliver the largest solar arrays ever to fly in space. At this time in assembly, the station will be the most powerful spacecraft in history. By early 2001, the station will begin its transformation into a research complex with the addition of its first space laboratory, Destiny. As assembly continues, the station will receive a robotic arm, which will assist in building and maintaining the growing spacecraft. An airlock will be added, making it easier to conduct station spacewalks. The Japanese experiment module, named Kibo, will amplify scientific research both inside and outside the station. Within a year, it will be joined by a European laboratory, Columbus, and eventually Russian research modules, which will further the pursuits of science. When assembly is complete, the International Space Station will be the largest and most sophisticated spacecraft ever built, enabling microgravity research to be conducted for years to come. Looking back at the history of station assembly, the addition of the Swesda module will be viewed as a turning point, when astronauts first had the ability to live in a new home in space.
Welcome to those just joining NASA Television's live coverage of the launch of the Swesda service module from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Engineers continue to monitor all systems aboard the Proton rocket and aboard Swesda, set to begin its voyage to space now in 5 minutes, 20 seconds. The official launch time is 8:56 and 36 seconds this morning in Moscow, 10:56 a.m. local in Baikonur. Just a few minutes ago, commands were sent to switch power from ground sources to Swesda's onboard batteries, and soon after Swesda reaches orbit, its command and control systems will be activated and stored computer commands will deploy communications antenna. The first will be the Coors Rendezvous and docking antenna, which will be used to provide automatic range rate information to the Zarya control module, which becomes the active vehicle on the day of docking. A little more than 13 minutes after launch, Swesda's solar arrays will be deployed, stretching to a wingspan of 95.5 feet, or about 30 meters. They will collect solar power for use by those batteries to generate electricity for equipment on board. About 90 minutes into its new life in space, Swesda will continue its programmed activation sequence as it makes its first pass over Russian ground stations. Systems activation will begin in rapid succession, including the module's power supply system, its radio communication system, and the critical motion control system. Later today, the motion control system will establish a stable orientation for the newest module of the International Space Station. The countdown clock is now approaching 4 minutes and counting to the launch of the Swesda service module. At the launch site, just a couple of kilometers away from the launch pad, is NASA Administrator Daniel Golden, along with other spaceflight program managers, space station program managers, and Russian spaceflight officials. They will be viewing the launch and then moving from there back to a Proton Conference Center, where they will conduct a post-launch news conference about an hour and a half or so after launch. On the launch pad here at Baikonur, or there at Baikonur, the countdown again is proceeding on schedule. They're now 3 minutes, 20 seconds away from the launch of the Proton rocket. At this point in the countdown, the Proton's booster stage steering jets are in the ready-to-launch position, and ground commands have been received from the rocket indicating that all control and auxiliary systems are ready for launch. Now approaching 3 minutes and counting to the launch. At this point, all of the data and telemetry recorders have been turned on by the Russian Space Force's ground controllers. And we now have confirmation that the telemetry system recorders have been turned on. They are designed to monitor all of the vibration and acoustic data during Swesda's climb to orbit. Now 2 minutes, 30 seconds from launch. Now 2 minutes from launch. All systems are go for the launch of the Proton rocket carrying the Swesda service module to the International Space Station. 1 minute point in the countdown. We have a report that the ground station recorders have been activated. All still go for the launch at 56 minutes 36 seconds after the hour. Now less than 1 minute away from a most anticipated launch of the Swesda service module. T-minus 30 seconds. All still go for launch. A beautiful day at Baikonur with just hazy conditions and clear skies. 20 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff. We have engine ignition and liftoff of the Proton rocket carrying Swesda, the centerpiece of Russia's contribution to the International Space Station, setting the stage for permanent human presence in space. We have reports that we have a good roll and pitch program. Reports our first stage nominal so far, 25 seconds into the launch. Swesda is heading toward a July 26th link-up with the International Space Station. Proton rocket delivering 1.9 million pounds of thrust from its 6 engines. The first stage of the Proton measures 68 feet in length, 24 feet in diameter, as it burns for the first 2 minutes and 6 seconds of the flight, now approaching 50 seconds. Now 1 minute into the flight, all continued to go very smoothly. Still reporting all nominal with the launch. 1 minute, 25 seconds into the flight. Again, the first stage will burn minutes and 6 seconds. One minute, 45 seconds. Swesda now heading down range. First stage performance still nominal and about to burn out at 2 minutes, 6 seconds. Now approaching the 2 minute point in the launch of the Swesda service module atop a Proton rocket. And we have confirmation of first stage separation. The 6 liquid-fueled engines have finished their roll and have dropped away at an altitude of about 27 statute miles. The Proton is traveling about 3,700 miles an hour at this point. The second stage engine ignition has been accomplished. The second stage again will burn for the next 3 minutes or so. Reports are that all of the pressure in the tanks of the second stage are nominal. There are 4 engines that make up the second stage propulsion system, and again, those are scheduled to fire for about 3 minutes and 28 seconds. Continuing to get reports from Baikonur that all is nominal with the launch of the Swesda service module on its way to a link-up with the International Space Station on the 26th of July, just 14 days from now. Three minutes, 30 seconds into the flight, we have confirmation that the nose fairing encapsulating Swesda has been jettisoned at an altitude of about 48.5 statute miles, and in doing so has deployed 2 command and control antennas and a telemetry antenna on Swesda. Proton is now traveling at a speed of about 4,700 miles per hour. All still being reported as stable. The second stage is performing as advertised for the Proton. The second stage of the Proton rocket is 56 feet in length, 13.5 feet in diameter, and its four engines are providing about 475,000 pounds of thrust for its 3 minute 28 seconds of operation. Approaching 4 minutes, 45 seconds into the flight, another 5 minutes or so of powered flight remaining. And about 30 seconds or so remaining in the burning of the second stage of the Proton rocket. At this point, Swesda's onboard recorders are now collecting module telemetry as it continues its climb to orbit. We'll be standing by momentarily for the burnout of the four liquid-fueled second stage engines. We're standing by again for second stage burnout and separation. And we do get reports now that the motion control system is stable, all very healthy and in good shape aboard the Proton rocket. Now approaching 6 minutes into the flight. And we do have confirmation of second stage separation. Those four liquid-fueled engines have completed their task for today. They're now dropping it away at an altitude of about 86 statute miles and about 4 minutes or so of powered flight remaining. We now have confirmation that the single engine on the third stage is burning and all is in good shape. That engine provides about 125,000 pounds of thrust, and it will burn for about 4 minutes and 3 seconds. Proton's velocity is now more than 10,000 miles per hour. We are getting reports that the chamber pressure in the tanks on board the third stage are also nominal at this point. Computer command should be being sent to the Swesda to prepare its own propulsion system for operations once it reaches orbit, and this process should take about 30 seconds or so to complete. Once the Proton's third stage delivers the Swesda to orbit and the module is separated from the Proton, a series of pre-programmed commands will be executed to prepare it for orbital operations. These stored commands, called time-tagged commands, allow many of Swesda's systems to be automatically activated by onboard computers at precise times that are stored in the onboard data management system, which is supplied by the European Space Agency. Approaching 8 minutes into the flight. All continuing to go smoothly. The yaw, pitch, and roll commanding for the third stage is all nominal. Everything going very smoothly with this morning's launch of the Swesda service module. More than 8 minutes into the flight. Again, about a minute and a half or so remaining in the third stage firing of the Proton rocket. And again, standing by at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, waiting to hear the confirmation of spacecraft separation is NASA Administrator Daniel Golden, along with other NASA officials and Russian space officials as well, waiting with great anticipation for the shutdown of the third stage engine and confirmation of separation of the Swesda service module from the Proton's third stage. We're approaching 9 minutes into the flight. All reports are everything's still going very smoothly with this morning's launch. 9 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Standing by for the confirmation of third stage engine shutdown. We have confirmation that the third stage engine has now shut down and has dropped away at an altitude of about 220 statute miles, standing by for spacecraft separation, and we now do have that confirmation that the spacecraft Swesda is now in orbit on its own. Its latches securing it to the third stage of the Proton rocket having been released through pyrotechnic command. Proton's third stage steering jets are now firing to separate the booster from Swesda, and the module will now begin to initiate its pre-programmed commanding for appendage deployment. Swesda is orbiting at an altitude of about 343 by 173 kilometers. That orbit will be raised systematically over the course of the next 2 weeks, placing it in close proximity to the International Space Station for the final rendezvous and docking, again scheduled for the morning of July 26th, Moscow time. That'll be the evening on the east coast of the United States of the July 25th. We're getting reports that the timeline is being followed precisely by the Swesda service module. There are two groups of pyrotechnic devices that control the deployment of the appendages on the spacecraft. We have confirmation that the latch and spring mechanisms holding the core's antennas are in place, have been fired, and those antennas now are being deployed. Also, the latch motors that are holding the solar arrays in place are also being released. The solar arrays will be deployed in about a minute and a half or so. And we will get confirmation of that and pass that along as soon as it occurs. The core's antennas are used for the automatic docking that occurs again on the 26th of July. Also being deployed are two docking targets that are used for the FGB or the Zarya control module's automatic docking to the Swesda service module. Additionally, the low data rate antenna and the high data rate antennas are being deployed. One called the Regal, which is the low data rate antenna, the other called the Lyra. Those two antennas are confirmed being deployed at this time. Now 13 minutes into the flight, and again the next activity will be confirmation that the twin solar arrays have been deployed, those to provide the electrical power from the sun, storing that into the 4 onboard batteries that are currently in the Swesda service module. 4 additional batteries will be installed by astronauts and cosmonauts during a shuttle mission scheduled for September. Again, as we stand by to get confirmation of the solar array deployment, the launch this morning was apparently flawless. The launch time right on time at 56 minutes, 36 seconds after the hour. That was just 14 minutes, 20 seconds ago. By all accounts, the climb to orbit using the Proton rocket was without incident. Swesda, the service module, the Swesda standing for the Russian word for star, is now on its own, and we'll go through a series of pre-programmed commands over the next several days. Later today, or actually tomorrow, there will be 2 test burns of Swesda's engines that are located on the back end of the module. Those to verify their performance. They also will actually provide a little bit of altitude boost to Swesda as it begins to refine its orbit in relation to that of the International Space Station. We have confirmation that the solar arrays are now being deployed. That sequence takes about a minute or so. And at 15 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight, we now have received confirmation of both solar arrays being deployed on the Swesda service module. Those solar arrays stretching the wingspan of the module to 30 meters, or about 95.5 feet. Telemetry on the ground showing the modules in excellent shape. And we are trying to confirm the deployment of all of the appendages that were scheduled for deployment during this sequence. At this point, all accounts are that everything has gone very smoothly with the launch of the Swesda service module, and 14 days from now, a link-up in space will take place high above the Asian continent. That docking will make Swesda the newest addition to the International Space Station to provide the living quarters for people from many nations to further humankind's quest to explore. Again, there are a series of rendezvous burns that will be performed just as the shuttle would do on its rendezvous with the International Space Station. And Swesda will perform most of those rendezvous maneuvers, and the station will perform additional rendezvous maneuvers as well. We have a post-launch news conference from Baikonur scheduled about an hour and a half from now, and we'll also conduct a post-launch news conference here from the Mission Control Center in Korolyov. At this point, all went very smoothly this morning with the launch, and at this point we will conclude our live coverage of the launch of Swesda. But again, stay tuned for those post-launch news conferences on NASA television, and participants are expected to be the head of agencies and possibly other Russian officials from Baikonur. So with that, we'll sign off, and again, the launch on time this morning at 56 minutes, 36 seconds after the hour. Now 18 minutes into the flight, Swesda on its own with appendages deployed, and all has gone very smoothly. This is Mission Control, Korolyov.